Hello, and welcome to Money Matters TV. My name is Michael Verrill, and I am the Vice President of Strategic Development with the Sharp Financial Group. We are a multidisciplined financial services firm helping business owners create and grow wealth. Through related focus areas, Sharp Accounting and Tax, Sharp Advisory, Sharp Capital, and Sharp Wealth Management, we are providing the resources and advice to help entrepreneurs create and execute on their business strategies, both business professionally and personally, to be successful. Thank you for joining us for our continuing conversation and discussion on growth stories, where we hear from entrepreneurs and advisors sharing their secrets and advice on what business owners need to know to grow. From time to time, financial issues relating to life sciences, healthcare, or technology matters or companies may be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may no longer be current. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transactions. I am pleased to have with me my co-host, Cheryl Beth Kuchler, from Ballantree Consulting. Ms. Kuchler is the president of Ballantree Consulting and the founder of CEO Think Tank. She has over 25 years of experience providing business advisory services, leading strategic change initiatives, coaching executives, designing leadership, training, and development programs, and supervising production areas. Since 2001, her focus has been on providing business consulting and coaching services to CEOs, business owners, and senior executives of small to mid-sized businesses, think tanks, and think tanks for CEOs. She works with leaders as well as their teams to develop and implement business and life strategies which leverage their strength and maximize their potential. Cheryl Beth, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
It's great to see you.
Great being here.
It was great to have you as a guest in the past, and it's terrific to have you back as the co-host, so thank you for that. Before we meet our guest, was hoping you could maybe give me a couple highlights on some things you've been working on since the last time we met.
Absolutely. We just are wrapping up our 10th annual Growth Strategies Survey of CEOs, over a couple hundred CEOs over the greater Philadelphia area and into New York. And we'll be coming out with the results of that in less than a month on Ballantree Consulting.
Oh, that's excellent. I'm sure there's a lot of anticipation around the results.
Yes.
It sounds like that's been keeping you very busy.
Yes.
Before we introduce our guest, we have a question from one of our viewers. This one is from Janet Walker of Wayne. She would like to know, is funding for startups increasing or decreasing in the Philadelphia area? According to the PwC National Venture Capital Association Money Tree report, which is published quarterly, the amount of money invested in early stage companies for quarter 3 of 2015 was approximately $144,626,000. In the quarter 4 of 2015, the number increased 10% to $161,338. According to this report, money invested in Pennsylvania is going in the right direction. If you have questions to submit to future shows, here's how to send your questions to Money Matters.
Questions answered on Money Matters, please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
We are excited to introduce our guest, Ed Sullivan. Ed is a local guy, having grown up in Delaware County. He caught the entrepreneurial bug and realized the benefits of business growth when he was in 8th grade. The Bulletin newspaper had just closed the day he started his new paper route with the Inquirer. He quickly took advantage of a market need and more than doubled the prescriptions previously on the route. After a trip to the Franklin Institute and a Cub Scout presentation demonstrating the power of electricity sparked his interest, he went on to Drexel University, where he received his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. He then went to work for the Philadelphia Electric Company and attended grad school while there. This work took him back to the lab, where he developed the idea for his first company. Forever the serial entrepreneur, he is currently working on his fourth company. Ed, thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me.
Ed, you have a constant drive to start and grow companies. What was it about your childhood growing up that you think gave you this initiative?
So a couple things. I think the primary thing was I grew up in the 70s, kind of a tough economic climate during that period of time, and watched my parents in particular struggle with finances and making ends meet. And my dad had a rough time in particular because he was kind of in between the Korean War, his age, between the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And when all those guys came back and had the GI Bill, he only had a high school diploma. So a lot of those individuals were displaced because of their degrees. And my dad was kind of downsized because he didn't have a bachelor's degree in the mid-70s to do his job. So when I saw those kinds of things happening, it was the first inkling that there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way that you can control your own destiny. It was rough on my family, and it seemed like that we were, impacted by some other third party who I didn't know or had no information about. So that combined with the paper route story that you mentioned earlier, where I was able to, choose my hours relatively and make pretty good money for an 8th grader, that kind of gave me the bug to want to control my own destiny and work for myself.
And is that same drive a part of what caused you to start to look for opportunities and the LASIX opportunity that came along, or how did that all come about?
Yeah, so there was also an interesting talk I attended while I was at Drexel with the dean at the time, where when I was an electrical engineer at Drexel, we had two choices: go work for the PICO, the local utility, or go work for RCA over in Camden as an engineer there. And there was stuff in between, but largely they were the two big channels for engineers. And we had one engineer came in and gave us a talk who was a consultant, and he did forensic engineering. So he would testify in court if a bridge broke or something like that. And he gave us this talk about you don't have to work for the big guy. You can work for yourself, create a very nice living, support your family, have the house with the picket fence, etc., and you don't have to go and do the normal path. So he was somebody that I saw that also kind of not lit the spark, but fanned the flames of work for yourself, don't work for the man. There's things that you could do without going into and being an employee.
Right.
Well, and what was the experience or the advice that you then leveraged when you started the business?
So the first business I started, I really hadn't leveraged any advice about starting a business. I just had the fire in me, knew I wanted to do it, and it was kind of a set of circumstances that led me into starting my own business. I was working in my graduate degree at Drexel, working on lasers and fiber optics, and it just so happens that the technology that I was working on with this type of fiber optic is the same technology that they use for LASIK. So I was approached by an ophthalmologist here in Philadelphia who was an undergrad engineer from Drexel also, became a doctor and then became an ophthalmologist. And he showed me what was going on with eye surgery at the time. And he and I designed a laser to treat eyes. And in fact, the first LASIK done in the United States was done on a laser that I had built for him in Radnor, Pennsylvania, in 1989, I believe.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. I had LASIK done much later.
It's come a long way now.
Yeah.
It's I think they shoot the laser. You don't even know the laser's being shot.
Right.
So I
Right.
think
The whole concept's hard to get your head around when you put your eyes at risk there.
Yeah.
But once you bite the bullet and do it, it's definitely worth it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
for your research.
It's a great procedure.
It's great.
I don't want
It's
to take
great.
all the. It was just kind of we developed a way to do it better.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of people that built the foundation of the original technology.
So you met that first doctor, you worked with him in Radnor. Talk about how you scaled that business. Like where'd you go from, okay, now do I have a platform here?
Right.
Like we'll talk about that decision process.
So it was not me going out and proactively forming a business, creating a business plan and doing it. Another doctor approached me and asked me if I would help him build a laser. So I did it for Dr. 1, I did it for Dr. 2, and before I knew it, I had about 20 ophthalmologists around the country that were interested in doing it. So I did it largely as a consulting business. My combination of electrical engineering and physics and helping them build their own laser in their office to go through the steps of the clinical trial to eventually treat patients in their office. And that was kind of where I learned the difference between building a professional services business versus building a product-based business, because it really wasn't my product. It was my intellectual property and the designs, but I wasn't selling a product. I was selling the service of consulting with them on how to do it.
And a business completely dependent on you and your services.
In scale, limited to how many flights I could take, how many faces I could meet, how many hands I could shake, and that was the limit of my scale for that business.
Okay, so you learned from that, right?
Absolutely.
For the start of the next business, thinking, okay, you had a successful exit at that. You were able to sell that intellectual property to some degree to somebody else.
So I had a successful exit and used the proceeds of that business to start a product-based business where we developed a product for the internet. And it was back in the early days of the internet when you had to dial in to, you hear the modem dial in and make the connection, and that was how you became connected to the internet.
Right.
And I had at first decided to compete directly with AOL, MSN, and the players at that time, and lost. got my clock cleaned competitively by those guys. And
Because they were much better capitalized. At the
better
time.
capitalized, better marketers than I was. And what the awakening for me in that example, I went to my mom's for dinner one Sunday night, and she was very proud of me that she had gotten one of the discs in the mail that we were carpet bombing people with. And I was really upset because she didn't have a computer. And I was like, how can this possibly be that I am marketing to people that don't have computers?
Right.
It's the prerequisite.
Because
you need a computer to use my service.
And you're thinking in your mind, okay, the cost of the marketing, the list you bought, the disc you developed, all of that, and your mom's happy that
stamps.
You included her.
All the time I spent licking the stamps on the packaging.
Exactly.
So what was your takeaway from that?
So my takeaway was I needed to find some way to get the people right as they were buying a PC. So myself and my partners in that business started approaching companies like Gateway Computer and convincing Gateway to, you have a valuable asset here with your brand name and the number and your install base. So we convinced Gateway to start their own branded ISP called Gateway.net, bundled in with their PC, and we built all of the infrastructure required to sign customers up, turn things on, get them out on the internet, have email, web hosting, a complete bundle, all branded for Gateway, including call center. When they answered the phone, they answered it as Gateway. So signed that deal, and we went from having like 40 people as customers to 400,000. Christmas Eve, 1998. It turned on instantaneously when everyone got their computer home
for Christmas.
Opened it up for Christmas, and it was an interesting change.
How did you
go ahead? Well, and what was the exit like? How did you have an exit in mind, or?
What we did is we built that business up. So Gateway wasn't our only customer. We had Gateway, Compaq, Sony, IBM, Univision Online, the largest Hispanic ISP. Anyone that had a brand. Amway was our client that had a deep brand association. We were able to make them an ISP and go out and get value out of their constituency. So we sold that business in the bubble in 2000. So it was March of 2000 when we sold the company, right at the peak. Which some people say, wow, that was a great time to sell. But on the other hand, 30 days later, it was worth much less. The deal was worth much less than it was. And it kind of changes you psychologically when one day you're thinking about how am I going to pay my bills? The next day you're wondering, wow, maybe I could buy part of the Phillies.
Right.
And to the next day you're worried about your bills again, all within a 30-day period.
Welcome to the internet bubble,
Yeah.
right? So take a step back, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there, they grow their business to a certain level. If they think they have a great idea, maybe it's tested with 40 customers, but they want or know they need that really large customer to kind of put them over the. How did you? Obviously, you need to get that bigger customer, but I think a lot of times it's convincing that bigger customer that. I mean, was your product so unique that they didn't have other? Talk about that, like getting that large gateway customer to convince, able to convince them that you could go from 40 customers to 400,000 customers.
So some of what I've learned since that experience is that it's rare that you get that one big grand slam customer early on in the development of a product. It's usually luck or a unique set of circumstances that allows you to get there. In general, the way it happens is you need to have you go get some small customers, and mostly free, that you do, bend over backwards in customer support and implementation, get them up and running, interview them, talk to them, high feedback, and kind of build that pyramid up of, I have some, small customers, a little bit bigger, till you can get to that big customer. And you really need kind of a pyramid of referenceability, because that big customer, whoever it may be, the Fortune 100, probably won't take those free guys as a valid reference. And when you look at the buying process of these big companies, thing number one that they look at is, who have they done business with before? Have they done businesses with somebody that has my scale requirements, has my needs? And so that what I found is it's really hard to just go in and get that elephant out of the gate.
And is that some of the logic and the planning that you're using with your current company, your fourth?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the line?
So RE Systems, for instance, which is the one I started after LaserLink, we executed on that plan exactly. We knew that because it was a net new product, a lot of innovation. A lot of people didn't believe that we could do what we said we could do. So there's a lot of doubts. It was like missionary work. Come and join the cloud. It was SaaS, software as a service. It is a cloud-based computing engine. And what we were able to do is just gradually go out and convert people to this idea of being in the cloud. This is like 2005, 2006. And now it's ubiquitous. The cloud is everywhere. Everyone has a slideshow with clouds on it, and you don't even need to explain what the cloud is anymore. So going through that pathway of getting the small early adopters, trying to move into the mass market, and there are other things you need in your product that the early adopters don't require. For instance, a lesson that we learned at ARIA was our initial early adopters was in the gaming space. So the online games, there were subscription-based games where I'm going to, pretend I'm an elf and I'm going to go kill the trolls. So fantasy role-playing games. And what we learned there is the developers there were very technically oriented, and they could implement our product very quickly, and we didn't have to train them, we didn't have to do anything. But go to kind of non-technical company number one, and they wanted to buy seats of training, they wanted support, they wanted hand-holding, and we hadn't productized ourselves to that extent. Basically, we would give them a link to the website and say, there's our manual, go read it yourself.
Because it worked before with the technical folks. That's
right.
Interesting. You think you're checking all the boxes, getting the early adopters on there, but if their characteristic and how they use the product is different, then you still have a learning curve to go up.
Yeah.
And
their needs. One of the large customers we were able to get fairly early on had 500 users that were going to all be plugging into our platform and doing different things, and they all needed training. So the bad news is we didn't have the training. We didn't have it set up. We hadn't really thought about those aspects of what do we need to get this big customer. The good news is we very quickly created what became a very big revenue source for us in training these customers that needed end users that could not just be trained on how our platform worked, but how does their rule set work on top of our platform. So
that was another layer of revenue generation for you, the training packages that you could sell and things like that.
That's right, training and support. Differentiating your support. A lot of companies early on treat everybody at the gold standard, which you kind of have to in the early days. But as you mature, you need to differentiate your
Customers.
support, because you can't
Right.
give platinum support to everybody that rolls into the door.
Sure.
It's hard.
Yeah,
Just not-
yeah. One
not
of the
cost-effective.
biggest lessons that you've talked about is you've got to learn how to say no, but you've also got to learn how to say yes in different formats with different types of customers.
Yeah, correct.
And what's your lesson there around, again, as we're sharing this information with other business people and entrepreneurs? What would you encourage other entrepreneurs and startups to do?
So kind of relative to the last question we asked, and getting that big customer, one of the challenges is sometimes those big customers have more people in charge of you than you have people. So how do you say no to that big customer that is writing the largest check for you every month?
Right.
We had a case where we actually fired our biggest customer one time because their team was abusive to my team, calling them at home where they would get their cell phones and really not playing well with us. And it was a hard decision for us to say no to them and turn them down and just say, look, we don't want to do this for you anymore. Go pick another provider. We'll do the transition for you, but I'm not accepting the way you're treating my employees.
Wow.
So that was a very tough no.
Wow.
On the other hand, for instance, saying yes in tough situations, sometimes when it may actually be a little bit misleading, was, hey, do you have a training program? We need you to come up with a way to train 500.
Answer yes and build it.
Of course we do.
Absolutely. Oh, did I mention it's just in my head?
Yeah.
We have it.
And on the plane back,
Yeah.
I will be writing the training program.
There you
It'll be
go.
up and running by Monday.
Taking
right.
advantage of an opportunity.
Exactly.
So I wanted one thing you said that was interesting to me, and I just wanted to go back on so when you developed the LASIK consulting business, you were deliberate in LaserLink in making sure that it was a product company, not a services company, because you saw the inability to scale the services company. Were there any deliberate lessons that you learned from LaserLink that you applied to Aria?
So yes, actually the idea for Aria came out of the experience I had at LaserLink. And the idea from going from a professional service industry that's depending on me being in a certain place at a certain time to being able to make money around the clock by having a product that was platform-based via the internet that people were integrating with and using on around the clock, around the globe. Actually, we were in 134 countries, sorry, because of the power of the internet. So with Aria, what we did is we built the infrastructure to enable this subscription economy, this way of charging people a subscription for access to some platform, some product, some game, some service that is being provided by either an individual or a large company. And that thinking around being able to make money all the time and scaling it infinitely in some cases, being able to handle 400,000 signups in one day, that was really what gave me the idea to start Aria, that it was a pretty wide opportunity.
Interesting.
Yeah, you've talked in the past about the advisors that you've used, how you really went out to seek advice. You didn't believe that you knew it all, is what I've heard you say.
Yep.
And tell us about what would you recommend? How would you go about finding the right advisors that other people can follow in your footsteps?
So what I did is I kind of tried I never had a business plan, but one of the things I did do is try to have an advisor plan. And I have it with G2 Link, my current company now. And what are the problems I'm going to have next quarter, next year, 5 years from now? How am I going to get through a growth stage of massive adoption of my product? What if I have a good problem? What if I have a bad problem? Early on in my career, as an engineer, I had very little exposure to financial statements. What is an income statement? What does a balance sheet look like? How do you manage the bank account? How do you do it in a way that it's auditable by your venture capital firm? Do it in a way that when a prospective acquirer is coming in, that everything's together and easy to see and there's no red flags for them. So I had advisors early on in LaserLink and Aria and G2 Link that had a very deep financial background, either in audit or public accounting, that were able to help me with my taxes, help me with setting up a profit share plan for my employees. And then later on with Aria, when we saw where the world was going, we tried to find somebody that had been there before, that would see, hey, we want to go public, where I want a CEO on the advisory board or on the board that had been the CEO of a public company before. So kind of trying to play, imagination games and figure out where you're going to be, where you want to be based on your goals, and what big problems are you going to have to solve that you've never solved before.
Right. So understanding those first is very important before you can really go out and find advisors who are going to give you the help in the areas you need it.
Right.
That's right. And also gives you, like a lot of people say, oh, go get a mentor. What kind of mentor do I get? I don't know. So it also gives you a great opening dialogue where you can reach out to somebody that's a high level and say, hey, I'm an entrepreneur here in Philadelphia. You're the king of accounting in the Philadelphia area. Would you mind giving me 15 minutes of your time and helping me out and pointing me in the right direction? And 95% of the time,
People want to help.
People want to help.
There you go.
One thing that's interesting to me in your story is, I think in particular for Aria, you were able to attract the investment from some of the West Coast venture firms, which has been the white tiger here for many entrepreneurs in the Philadelphia marketplace. What do you think you did differently, or how did you approach that to have a different result than a lot of entrepreneurs here have had locally?
So I think there really is an East Coast mentality and a West Coast mentality on venture capital. How they approach you, how they value your company, how they give you credit for future traction based on a big idea versus just based on what was your EBITDA last quarter or last year. So when I was raising money here in the Philadelphia area, it was certainly a challenge. I mean, it was kind of after the bubble, and there was a lot of wound licking going on in the Philadelphia area, in the private equity world. And I went to the West Coast, and I was also selling future technology. So they got it, they invested in it, and not that it was easy, it was just a much different process.
So it's more helpful. They kind of got the vision better than maybe some of the more conservative
That's correct.
West Coast. Right. We're almost out of time. I'd love if you could share, I know you like to read a lot, Ed, and I'd love if there's two just books, without going into detail, but two key books that have really helped you and given you advice along the way that you've really counted on.
So one of them we've actually talked about a lot in this conversation. It's called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. So all of this methodology of figuring out how to get across the chasm from the small early adopter customer to the big enterprise customer, it's basically a roadmap on how to do it. The other book that has been amazing for me through multiple companies is The Rockefeller Habits by Vern Harnish, which has now been not repurposed, but kind of revised, and is called Scaling Up. So that book has been really good on how to, if your goal is to do $1 million in revenue next year, that's a great goal, but how do you go backwards and chop that into little segments, and what do you do today? What do you do this quarter? What does everyone on your team need to do? Right. So it really aligns you around doing those things that you need to do to get to that goal in a very, very specific way. So those are my two big favorites.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. This has been an incredible, quick 30 minutes.
It went very quick.
So thank you very much.
Yes,
also like to thank my co-host, Cheryl Beth. Thank you very much for helping me out with the conversation with Ed today. Thank you again for watching Money Matters TV. The next Money Matters TV guest will be J. Charles Mann, CFP with Trinity Wealth Management. As a reminder, you can download the podcast from iTunes and Stitcher, as well as see programs on our YouTube channel or the website, money-matterstv.com. Thank you for spending time with us today.